Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and throughout our time hosting 551 windows on the channel, we get to watch and even experience a lot of the different playstyles out there for PvP combat. Majority of the coverage when it comes to classes, especially when talking about some of the more popular choices right now, have mostly been focused on dungeons and raids, but today I wanted to double back into one of my favorite aspects of WoW, which is its unique PvP environment. Especially with the expansion of War Within, we saw a variety of different class changes that were influenced by the introduction of hero talents that have allowed certain playstyles to unlock either new potential or better refine what they were already really good at. So if you're coming back for the rest of the season 1 to finish off the season before prep for season 2, I did want to go over some of my favorite options for PvP right now, highlighting majority of classes that are higher rated and are performing exceptionally well out of a variety of content, whether it is solo shuffle arenas or someone that plays better in a more comp-based field or even BG Blitz, but also playstyles that I particularly especially enjoy for one reason or another. And with me being especially a sucker for big burst damage, majority of the classes that I will pick are going to be very DPS and burst oriented. As always though, if you guys want to see more regular War Within updates, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. One of my all-time favorite combinations has to be any combination of a Frostfire Mage, whether it's fire, whether it's frost, and I love the playstyle that it offers for frost in particular and how it has allowed it to shine within PvP content. The Frostfire playstyle is a little bit better defensively as it provides the Frost Mage with an extra fire shield every time you pop a shield on yourself or others, but also a shorter cooldown for fire spells, so things like Dragon's Breath, as well as your Blast Wave knockbacks, all of those things that can be really good for increasing your own survivability, but also helping you get little setups. And when it comes to dealing with melee in particular, it is incredibly good there, which is something casters always complain about. And for a good reason, because melee are very annoying if you just can't get away from them whatsoever. But Frost Mages have a slightly easier time doing that. Frost Mage Frostfire playstyle in particular is all about big burst damage, like with the talent of Isothermic Core that allows you, together with a Comet Storm, to throw down a meteor on your target, and getting those meteor crits is incredibly satisfying, and I think it's probably one of the best mismatched combos of frost and fire. One gets Comet Storm, the other gets a meteor, and they just hit so damn hard. And for Frost Mages in particular, it is such a satisfying piece of a puzzle because it can be combined together with other bursty abilities, like a massive proc of a Frostfire Bolt, or potentially even a Ray of Frost, or if you play into Glacial Spike for one reason or another, or just landing a bunch of lances back to back. Any one of those combinations, as long as you can get those shatter bonuses with flurries or even a root on the target, or just stun them in general, you can achieve some of the best damage out there. It's also a very insta-casty playstyle thanks to the way the Frostfire works, with a lot of its insta-cast damage from the procs of lances, the flurries, even the procs of the Frostfire bolts themselves, plus with the original Frost Mage toolkit, it grants you a lot of mobility, it grants you a lot of setup on the move, and it's everything a mage can love, especially when it comes to applying control on enemies, having that insta-cast mobility, getting those fire breaths and knockbacks for the melee. It's just one of the best combos that feels really good to pick up, and I think it just ends up working out so much better than alternative playstyle options for Frost Mage spec. Now another spec that's worth highlighting is the Feral Druid, and you gotta love a class with big dot damage that isn't an Affliction Warlock. And out of all the different melee classes out there, we have things like a bleed build for arms warriors that we've seen work out in previous expansions. There's technically a dot focus red pally build if you end up still playing Herald of the Sun with its constant pressure. Assassination rogues are full of dots and bleeds and everything, but Feral Druids are the king of dot and bleed damage, so much so that they really are highlighting that aspect of them specifically for this expansion thus far. Bleeds are so insanely strong and satisfying to use on a Feral Druid, and right now it feels like they're just tuned up to an 11. And the spec excels at sustained spread pressure damage, being able to put our rips as well as moonfires and swarms and rakes on everybody on the enemy team within a BG, within an arena is just so strong right now, especially thanks to the Wildstalker hero spec, which amplifies those dot damage even further by adding an extra bleed and amplifying all the damage you have on the target, and these vines can sprout on targets fairly regularly, or you can force them with a big Feral Frenzy. It is just so strong right now, and it's definitely worth talking about. On top of it, Ferals also still have very mean bites. It seems like they've been trying to tone back the bite damage, but really fortified the bleed damage a ton over the last few builds, but right now Pharaohs are probably in the best spot right now. If you're just looking for raw damage, survivability is always a thing with Pharaohs. You know, it just barks in wall, timing that is against stuns, being forced into bear form. There's definitely drawbacks to every single spec in the game, no doubt about it, but I would have to say that Pharaohs right now are in a really good spot if you're looking for a very powerful melee to pick up going forward. Now, another range caster spec that I've been really loving is Affliction Warlocks, specifically as a Soul Harvester, and this is someone who's mostly played Affliction Warlock as a Hellcaller throughout a huge portion of the early development of this expansion, but Affliction Warlock's Soul Harvester always was unique with its bursty type of gameplay that I felt like it was always aimed at a PvP environment, and that's exactly where it can excel. Affliction Warlocks, like some of the other casters, do have sometimes struggle against melee classes. Everybody has a different drawback when it comes to the overall gameplay, and it does take him a little bit of time to set up the full proper burst and all the dots and get all the debuffs rolling, but once you can, the playstyle is super satisfying and fun to play into, and it just is incredibly potent. The mixture of dots together with strong instant cast damage from your shadow bolts as well as malefic raptures, I think is a nice combination that is viable thanks to the Soul Harvester hero spec, and where you're able to embrace its true uniqueness of Affliction Warlock, which doesn't have to just choose about being rot and sustain damage, but it can actually have a bit of a punch to it as well. But it doesn't mean that Affliction is no longer a great dot class. It still has a ton of rot potential. It's just their whole kit of damage output is very varied right now, and that's what I really enjoy about Affliction Warlock, is how it still retains that same identity, but thanks to a hero spec combination with a couple of different talents that do alter some of your gameplay and do give you more procs, as well as some guarantees to certain procs like your Shadow Bolt synergies. I think it just adds a little bit of extra flavor to a spec that's super satisfying to play, no matter what expansion I pick it up at any moment. Another melee that's also very strong, and I think worth everyone's time, no matter the expansion, is a Subtlety Rogue, especially with the Rogue's 1105 rework, which was actually just incredibly insane. However, like every other spec in the game, they do have drawbacks, like you no longer have double vanish with CDR. You still do have double vanish, but the CDR on it is kind of gone, which is great for everybody else, not as great for Subtlety, but they did reimburse them with quite a bit of burst, which I think is very good and super fun, whether you're doing random BGs or Blitz in particular. It's one of the cheesiest specs when it comes to big burst damage, as Subtlety's designed around burst in particular. There have been some moments in some expansions like Starter Legion where the spec was very sustain oriented. It was mostly focused around spamming Shadow Strike against every target as it teleported you all over the map, but the spec always reverts back to a burst class because it is better designed that way, and it just feels more satisfying to play it when it is really burst oriented. And right now it's very burst oriented with some of the different overlapping buffs between Supercharger, between Depth Perception, and as well as the hero specs, whether it's Trickster or Deathstalker. They're all very fun and really help add to the burst damage. But it's also, as of this build, very possible to start playing DFA again on your Rogue because of the synergy with Deathstalker and Trickster, and it makes the spec even more satisfying because lighting up a 3 million eviscerate guaranteed crit on a target, I mean, once you do it the first time or 20 times in a row, it is just a satisfying thing, and being able to get some of the biggest crits out there is a work of art in itself. It's a quintessential rogue ninja spec that has all the vanishes and can dance around your foes, so it's really fun in that aspect. And it's one of the handful of specs where it seems like the more time you spend with it, the better you get at it, which is all on its own a very gratifying experience. Another spec that I think worth mentioning is also Beastmaster Hunter, some of the best damage for a range class in the game by far, and it's also very difficult to stop. Beastmaster Hunters have been the flavor of the month of the season, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Every single season you have a flavor of the month that everybody's going to get into, but it just makes it the easiest alt for you to pick if you just looking to dive into PvP, but aren't necessarily looking for anything serious. Or maybe you did end up doing your pushes all on your main, and now you want to push on something that is very strong, very good. Beastmastery would be that spec for you. And as someone who usually prefers to explore the underdog specs, I think it's always good to have some perspective and play and even enjoy whatever is meta for the season. Especially if, let's say, you are hard at grinding on your main, maybe it's a spec that's not super popular. I think it's always a good idea to just take a break from the grind and just enjoy something that is just default really good. And Beastmaster Hunter is in that state as we speak. It's also very new player friendly, so if this is your first time really trying to get into PvP, Beastmastery is a fantastic starting point. as it doesn't have the most complex rotation, but it still does have a little bit of depth, knowing how to kite an enemy and keeping yourself safe and healthy at range, knowing how to rotate all of your crowd control abilities to make sure you never get touched by another melee player, and knowing how to position yourself but also your pets in order to maximize your full damage is something you will still have to learn. Every class has a little bit of depth behind it. Dark Ranger also in particular is extremely fun to play with. If you played Beastmaster Hunter during expansions like Shadowlands, for example, where you got to use kill shots fairly regularly in between your basic kill commands, cobra shots, and barb shots, the Dark Ranger playstyle with the Black Arrows ability is super satisfying to get into right now, and it adds an extra ability that's very hard hitting that can give you a little bit more variation in your basic overall PvP rotation. But with that, that's going to be my entire class PvP highlight for the War Within expansion, and I do want to thank all of you so much for watching, and hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, like if it gave you an idea of which ult you want to gear up next for PvP in War Within, go ahead and give this little video a like. I would very much appreciate it. Join our Discord community for regular War Within updates and guides and a bunch of other stuff that we have over there. But also let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Which class are you currently playing, or at least are looking to end the season with in War Within Season 1? And as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.